the healthcare system right now. And there's three major trends we saw that kind of led us to this solution, right? First and foremost, and it's something we all know very well now, healthcare industry is currently broken. The largest players only make money when we're sick. And so what we have is more of a sick care model than real healthcare. Now, the real kicker here is that it's not just the healthcare industry that's pushing you to be a sloppier version of yourself. The entire world in the 21st century is filled with incentives keeping you a worse version of your true self. One of the best examples of this is the Netflix CEO saying his biggest competitor is sleep. So, yeah, and that's just one of the many examples, right? We can get into the dark patterns that social media companies use, and it's all just relates to incentives, which is another great reason for the opportunity Web3 gives.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Tellr podcast. Today, we are honored to have Agastya Samat join us on this podcast. He is a Web3 founder, a thought leader with 10 years of experience in startups, fintech, mobile gaming, and digital health. And over the last 5 years, he's been very focused on preventative health and solutions around chronic disease epidemics. Agastya, welcome to the Tellr podcast.
Andrew, Cody, thank you guys so much for having me.
Welcome.
Absolutely excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for taking a little bit of the pressure off too. It's nice when we have a guest.
Yes. We don't have to pretend to know things.
Yeah.
I think that's what all of us are doing in crypto right now.
Yeah, speaking
of
that,
who aren't coping.
Yeah. Speaking of that, let's jump in with that a little bit. Like, what are your current thoughts around the current state of the market, and what meme coins are you buying on the dip? Fart coin or Trump token?
Hilarious. So before we started this podcast, I think Cody had a very funny quote, which is he's been losing money in crypto since about 2016, 17, and I think I'm in a relatively similar boat. I've had a few occasional wins. Frankly, the only time I've really made money was on this Trump coin recently. I think
Yay!
Finally it's paying a bit, I guess. But I think what I think all of us agree with is the potential of the technology. And I think that's what just keeps us coming back or staying in this space, right? So while I appreciate meme coins for what they are, some talk about them as having cultural significance, being part of the internet capital markets that, Solana keeps espousing towards. Really, they are the strongest way to onboard right now. And I think I've only been in the tech space for about 10 years, so I don't have full cycles of experience. But what I do believe is that once you get billions of people using a product, the revenue models and the right approaches for sustainability start to emerge. So really what all of us in the trenches right now, especially those building at the app layer, which I know, Andrew and Cody, you guys are too, if we just keep working towards onboarding hundreds of millions of people, and the best way to do that, we're going to see some extremely successful businesses emerge. And that's what I'm really excited about.
Awesome. When you look to the people around you, whether it's friends and family, are there other people around you in crypto beyond your professional network, of course, which is naturally kind of in that space?
Yeah. And so I would say most people I know are aware of crypto, right? And I think that change started really taking place in the last bull cycle, maybe a year before the FTX scandal finally broke. We saw a huge influx of people coming onto crypto and people generally being aware of crypto as a place of potential opportunity. Unfortunately, I think during that time, which is, I think, common for a lot of new tech paradigms, but we picked up a pretty bad reputation. The reality is that 90% of people I know, whether they're in, outside of the Web3 industry, so whether they're in Web2 or some other type of space, there is a negative connotation in crypto. And you see that with in all types of ways, right? And last kind of thing I'll say on this is that founders across all businesses see the value in using a Web3 technology stack, right? There's a huge new opportunity for end users with it. So existing businesses, especially forward-thinking Web2 businesses, are all looking at crypto. But when they survey their users are like, don't bring crypto into this because they associate it with a scam, a way for them to be extracted more. And that's something that, I'm hoping we see change in because till that gets solved, we're going to miss out on a lot of the opportunities.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with it. And I think that I've come to this like acceptance though, where it's like I've accepted crypto for what it is now. And I look to what I hope it becomes. But it's kind of like right now, and probably until Trump coin dumps his 80%, what he's holding on the market, it will still unfortunately play here for a while. Fortunately, unfortunately, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a double-edged sword. Like, what do you think? Trump launches a meme coin, a whole bunch of people, you made some money out of it, right? A whole bunch of people get onboarded. Is it overall good or overall bad or in the middle?
It's a really good question, Cody, and I've been trying to think about my opinion on it for the last few years. I think all of us in space, and it's just
it's a struggle. It is. I agree.
It really is the double-edged sword, right? And I think unfortunately I did see a tweet. I haven't checked the veracity of it, but it was talking about how 90% of the wallets that purchase Trump coin have done nothing else with their wallet other than that purchase or maybe the sale of that. And that, when people talk about Trump being an onboarding event, they use the analogy of hosting the Olympics, right? And when you host the Olympics as a city, you get a ton more economic value through the hotels, restaurants. If this statistic is true that 90% of Trump coin holders are not doing anything else with their wallets, I'm not sure if we're getting that economic value. And then, how many new people onboarded actually made money with it? Because unfortunately, one of the biggest draws right now for crypto is the making money proposition, which is why it's so important when you're looking at a TGE event for your token or you're trying to create a crypto business. It's so critical you build some sort of financial value proposition for the community because not much that's going to drive users other than that at this stage.
And just so anyone, TGE is token generation event. So it's when a smart contract is launched on the blockchain and like there's a new token generated because of that. So when people say TGE, it means the beginning of the coin, the beginning of the token. Yeah, that's a really important thing. And I'd love to go into that into a little bit more detail when we talk about the proof of health protocol. And we can get into because I'd like to ask you as a founder in the space a few questions about that. But just on joining the dots between kind of like blockchain and health, like just to kind of like set the scene there. Did you see it somewhere or did you say this is a proper use case for blockchain? Can you kind of like give us an overview of what happened there?
Yeah, I'm just thinking where to start because it's a bit of a long journey to getting here. But, just very quickly as a background, right? Graduated from law school about 10 years ago. And I was quite certain that I would be in corporate law. I joined this corporate law firm, made it about a month through, and I just couldn't cut it. I mean, the work was just not for me for a lot of reasons. So I ended up joining the startup space then pretty soon after and started my career in fintech venture capital. And I was looking at some of the projects we were investing in. And it's not that fintech didn't have opportunities, but what you could enable with crypto and Web3 rails for financial services was just so significantly better. And that kind of got me really kind of into this whole blockchain space. And so I was relatively late. I think, Cody, you and me might have started at a similar time around 2017. So at, you know, even seeing Bitcoin at about $5,000 to $10,000 while working at that fintech venture capital fund, it was hard for me drafting investment memos for other fintech startups when I knew the value proposition or opportunity with investing in Bitcoin was much more guaranteed in many ways. So that's how I kind of began seeing the opportunities in Web3 and crypto. And I think financial services was one of the lower hanging fruit for what potential Web3 could offer. Then I kind of moved around. I wanted to get like more real startup experience. I didn't want to be on the investing side anymore. So I joined a few startups and ended up spending the last 5 years of my career in digital health. But I never lost the startup bug, or rather the Web3 bug, sorry. So in my last job before Universal Health Token, I was at a company called Goki, which is one of the leading healthcare ecosystems in India, the largest preventive health ecosystem. And while there, the founder and me would have a lot of conversations. His name is Vishal Gondal, and he's a true visionary, a serial entrepreneur raising venture capital back in the 90s in India. And we always saw there was a massive opportunity in health and crypto rails, because preventive health is all about sustained motivation, and preventive health is about, it's four things, right? Exercise, nutrition, sleep, and mental health. And the idea is that with a focus on these four things, you can transform healthcare for a population at scale, especially with these digital incentives that are coming. So when we're talking about sustained motivation, these four areas of preventive health, gamification plays a huge role. And, you guys, both Andrew and you, work in the Web3 space quite extensively. We know that gamification is such a strong and easy use case for Web3 technology because it goes into incentives, which is what Web3 really enables. And so spent a lot of time ideating there. We actually raised a large capital round from some big Web3 investors while I was at that company. And that's kind of when I started thinking of the opportunity to bring Universal Health Token, which is a project I currently work on at scale. And so I've been working on it for 2 years, and we can kind of dig deeper into that. But I feel like I've gone on a bit of a spiel, so I'll hold off for a second.
No, that was great background on kind of how you ended up where you are now, which I am excited to go into a bit. I guess, talking about this kind of concept of proof of health that you're working on, and then also another term that we're seeing increasing acknowledgement in the space from DeSci. Let's talk about that a bit. I guess to start that off and to give this kind of high level explanation of UHT and what you're working on, if you had to, if you were in an elevator with someone like a health guru like Andrew Huberman, or some policymaker around healthcare at a national level, how would you pitch or explain UHT to them?
Sure. So at the highest level, Universal Health Token is about fixing the broken incentives in the healthcare system right now. And there's three major trends we saw that kind of led us to this solution, right? First and foremost, and it's something we all know very well now, healthcare industry is currently broken. The largest players only make money when we're sick. And so what we have is more of a sick care model than real healthcare. Now, the real kicker here is that it's not just the healthcare industry that's pushing you to be a sloppier version of yourself. The entire world in the 21st century is filled with incentives keeping you a worse version of your true self. One of the best examples of this is the Netflix CEO saying his biggest competitor is sleep. So, yeah, and that's just one of the many examples, right? We can get into the dark patterns that social media companies use, and it's all just relates to incentives, which is another great reason for the opportunity Web3 gives. The two other major trends we saw is healthcare spend as a percentage of GDP across the world is the fastest growing line item for governments. It is skyrocketing in expense, and that alone isn't a problem. The idea that we're spending more on healthcare, maybe less on defense, is a good proposition. The issue is the end user, the population, is not feeling like they're getting bang for the buck. They're just, in fact, there's increasing dissatisfaction at the consumer level for healthcare infrastructure across the world.
I think that sick care, what you said, really rings true. Like if you can draw the line between preventative and like taking care of someone after they're sick and see where that money went, it would be a completely different story, right?
Nail on the head. And that exactly lines up with the third major trend we saw, which is the leading contributor to global mortality. Essentially, the leading cause of death worldwide is what we call chronic diseases. Chronic diseases are your high blood pressure, diabetes. These are long-term diseases that cannot be treated or cured effectively with pharmaceutical medication alone. It requires...
what I'm going to die of.
Well, most of us, honestly, right? And it's morbid to think about, but we have to talk about these hard issues if we want to try and drive or get to the real solutions that can I don't want to say 100% solve them, but at least reduce their impact or the incidence, right?
Something you mentioned earlier, because this, I mean, so this line item, this increasing line item of healthcare spend, it's clearly not helping the end user, as you put it, general population. So where is that money currently going if it's not actually going to solve these problems? Do you have that information?
Of course. It's all, I mean, look, this is all my opinion. There's obviously nuances to this, but frankly, in most developed countries, it's going to the pharmaceutical companies. I think the Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's now being appointed as the new health secretary in the US. I don't want to get into whether we support or not support him, but he raises some really interesting points. And in his appointment hearing just yesterday, he mentioned how Medicaid is the largest line item in the government now. And it's primarily these new age drugs that are just spiraling in cost, right? Ozempic and obesity. Ozempic is not going to long-term fix the obesity epidemic. You have to combine it with lifestyle modification, and the pharmaceutical companies, the healthcare providers like hospitals, they aren't incentivized to make you get better. They get a cut of every single drug they give, right? So it's that simple. The Charlie Munger quote is so apt here, and it's like, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
This realignment of incentives is so important, and I think it's very cool that you're focused on that. And just to add one data point, just personal data point, I'm a diabetic, just recently diagnosed in the last 3 years, and being on medications where they kind of started me did not make the impact that changes to my lifestyle made. It's like when I started to eat keto focused, mostly, I'm not 100% keto, but when I made that change and when I started to incorporate more, exercise, those are the things that impacted, positive change.
He eats a big fat chicken sandwich every Friday.
Yeah. I've been thinking about it. It's only Thursday, but,
Andrew, I just want to add to that. I'm so glad you figured that out. And doctors, very often, healthcare providers, the entire apparatus of healthcare won't tell you that. And in Goki, right, we ran one of the first digital therapeutics programs with this municipality called the BMC. The BMC is Mumbai in India's municipal government. It's the largest municipality in the world, 20 million people. And over there, we simply created a mechanism for users to, or the population to track exercise, nutrition, sleep, and mental health. And tracking these 4 metrics, giving them a little bit of coaching on these metrics, led to the most significant reduction in H1 for diabetics and blood pressure for high blood pressure patients. And the alternative is a life on statins or various other medication, and that's fine as well. Maybe combine them, but you cannot ignore the opportunity that these digital therapeutics in prevention can play a role here.
Yeah.
Okay, so just how does that currently kind of work in Web 2 without kind of the ability to give value on chain? And how can it work the other way? Just kind of like a Because like what's happening now, I know there's like lots of fitness trackers and things like that, and like what maybe could happen, just high level. We don't have to go too detailed, but
yeah, for me, right, I think there's two major immediate opportunities with moving to a Web3 health stack, right? And I think we'll see much deeper opportunities emerge as we get more familiar with Web3. But right now, at the lowest hanging fruit, what we're working on at Universal Health Token is two areas. One is moving away from the siloed data structures in healthcare right now. So right now, it's very difficult to get all of your health data in one place. Very often, you don't even own your health data. Only recently have there been laws passed in some countries where your medical data with the hospital is actually yours and you can get it. For decades, hospitals could even prevent us from doing that and going to another hospital, right? And so moving to a more user-owned approach for this data is going to be super helpful, because the thesis across the world is that healthcare is going to move away from a one-size-fits-all approach. We're going to get more unique, personalized, and tailored healthcare offerings. And for that to happen, what my belief is that there'll be a proliferation of thousands of these small, niche, new healthcare providers that offer you a specific program for a certain issue with the goal of reversing it, curing it, more than treating it. And they'll need your data set to do that. There's no other way to price it properly or to give you the best unique offering. So the first thesis is that the siloed data structure of the old is going to move away. It goes back to the ethos of Web3. We want to move away from the walled gardens that the internet has become. And the internet was never imagined to be like that. The whole idea of it was this decentralized user-owned architecture. So that's on the siloed data front. The second front that I think is really exciting and kind of what I'm immediately working on with UHT, already our beta is live for this, is rewards and rewards layers and interoperable loyalty programs. Across the world, you'll see that virtual digital asset regulation is kind of in a nascent stage and changing in different ways across the world. But one area of crypto or virtual digital assets we've had for a long time is your airline rewards programs and your hotel rewards points, etc. And so the idea is that we can improve on those models by making it an interoperable data stack, allowing tons of partners to come on board and letting the price of the points be driven by free market economics versus this kind of centralized entity that's dictating what the reward should be.
So you're touching on it there a bit, and something I'm very interested in is like, we're talking about the realignment of incentives and kind of these reward systems that are more interoperable and focused on, being a healthy person. So can you kind of break down with UHT how this kind of live healthy to earn functions? Like, how can I earn based on making healthier life choices?
Yeah. So currently, right, in this beta we've been running for the last year, and we've been running a beta for a long time because we want to just get the most testing and the best solution out to market. For reference, I think Solana and a couple elements of Ethereum also refer to themselves still in beta. But in this beta, you can essentially be rewarded in what we're calling UHT points for measurable healthy behaviors and activities. And then you can spend those on our e-commerce store or partner e-commerce stores for various healthcare-related goods like fitness equipment, nutraceuticals, or services like blood tests, doctor consultations. And essentially, we are in the process of building the largest healthcare-focused e-commerce store in the world that includes everything but pharmaceutical pills. So our entire thesis is that it's not that pills are inherently bad or that we don't support them, but there's enough people pushing pills on you. What you need is someone to incentivize you to do the gamut of other stuff that keeps you healthy.
Yeah, I like that sick care, healthcare thing. Again, I'll just say it because this is kind of, when we say healthcare, it's even, the term is misleading a lot of the time, right? So this is kind of like switching my brain over a little bit, because when I think about like protein powder, I think about getting regular health checks or regular blood checks to check my hormone levels or whatever. That's like healthcare, whereas the other stuff, that's, sick care. And I know it's a bit maybe gimmicky, but it really is a divide there. And I guess that's preventative health. And then I don't know what you call the other health, like when you're already sick and you have to take medication. That's what medication's for, right?
And the sad truth is that the experts in the field all know that prevention is a much better approach than treatment. But unfortunately, in the current paradigm, it doesn't fit in the business model of healthcare.
Yeah.
So
it's not what they're selling.
Exactly.
Okay. So the beta is running. People can download an app, or is it, how do they?
So the way we are looking at UHT at this stage is a rewards layer that goes across several different mobile applications or partner platforms. So currently the beta is operating on a few platforms, including GoKey, which has millions of users and gives us a great test bed to kind of ensure our use case is functioning correct. And so that's where we've been kind of focused on over the last 10, 11 months. We're hoping to have our token generation event take place in this quarter, and that will allow us to scale to several new platforms.
Okay. All right. So these other devices or tracking tools, apps, then hopefully can one day plug into this layer, and then you can get your data from there and then be rewarded based on your data.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the longer term vision. So I'll answer that, or I'll give some additional color there in 2 points. One is that we've designed UHT to be device agnostic because we want to allow any player to come and join our ecosystem as long as they stick with our vision of creating a healthier world. And so why that's important is that you don't necessarily even need a wearable tracker to participate in the UHT economy. Even Apple Health or Google Fit connection will suffice.
Just a quick question. So, as a user of UHT, as someone that's earning rewards, obviously I'm incentivized. I'm improving my health. I'm earning rewards that I can then use to claim, health-related items, as you mentioned earlier. What's the incentive for businesses on the other side of the marketplace to start giving rewards and accepting these rewards as a form of payment if they have an e-commerce shop or something like this? Like, how are you attracting that side of the marketplace?
Yeah. Great question. And I think one of the reasons we selected our go-to-market strategy of a loyalty program is because it allows us to build this ecosystem of healthcare partners and health-conscious users to then build on and scale into various other kind of areas. So there's a couple different stakeholders, right? I think you're referring to, and I'll go through them one by one and share what kind of drives them to participate in the UHT economy. So the brands or healthcare providers that are in the e-commerce store want to get involved with this economy because of two things. One, there's been a huge boom in wellness over the last, ever since COVID, right? When consumer awareness across all dimensions of health has kind of skyrocketed. And so what this has led to is a very competitive landscape for wellness and healthcare brands. So these brands are very motivated to find ways to engage with a large health conscious user base who are kind of like the ideal customers. And that's what we offer them at UHT. It's a very similar proposition to what an airline rewards program or a hotel rewards program offers to their partners. These are, established, good customers that'll be long-term beneficial for you to onboard. Then at the provider level, so where it gets interesting is obviously every country has a different healthcare system, right? Our natural ally at UHT is what we call the healthcare payer. So in the US, you have an insurers pays market. In the UK, you have a government pays market. A lot of countries are moving towards one type of a payer system. A lot of the less economically developed countries are what they call a private individual pays market. So, it's up to the individual to pay for their own healthcare. The healthcare payer needs to find solutions to reduce chronic diseases. If they don't, and more people become obese, diabetic, high blood pressure, they will just deal with never-ending skyrocketing costs because of the nature of those diseases. And so when we speak to these healthcare payers, there's several solutions we can offer that make us very exciting for them. Now, this is just at the loyalty program level, right? But once we start getting into this proof of health protocol, which we're hoping to launch towards the end of this calendar year, that's where the real opportunities come in. Because for a long time, insurance companies, for example, have profited off that probability arbitrage, right? They take a risk on you not getting sick or getting sick, and they figured out that number. But this wave of AI that's now come in has democratized probability to the world. So my real thesis is that insurance may not have the longest time before it goes away. And if it intends to stay, then insurance will need to get access to a user's preventive healthcare data to give them the best offering. And if they do that, they'll lose out.
Okay.
Very interesting.
That's really interesting. So essentially, I could get, if I take more preventative measures and I have the data to prove it, right? I could then maybe get better deals on my insurance or better deals on, either the insurance company paying, or maybe I could even get better deals on some type of medical products or coverage or procedures based on my data, because I have all my data.
Exactly. Yeah. It links up to a concept called dynamic healthcare offerings and dynamic insurance. The future is one where the price and substance of the healthcare offering will be dynamic. And already many countries have explored with this approach of if your tracker is showing you walk 10,000 steps a day, you'll get this benefit, because we know how hugely beneficial 10,000 steps is a day for overall health, the savings that the healthcare payer gets from it. But the 15 years of data we've now got from wearables proliferating the market and the actual impact on the metrics it's collecting and someone's health, that's all only coming to the foreground now in the research world. And that is going to unlock, a whole new paradigm of how we look at health.
Yeah, especially when AI gets in there and starts to analyze the data more. So is this already happening? You said that you can, some places you do 10,000 steps, you prove it, you might get a rebate or a discount. That's happening?
Yeah, I think Singapore, New Zealand have been some of the first movers in the space. There's some interesting work also happening in India. In those examples I gave, that's at the government level. There's, of course, digital platforms who are trying to also offer incentives. But I think it's still the lowest hanging fruit of stuff we're exploring. It's walk 10,000 steps, you'll get $100 at the end of the year, right? The real opportunity is seeing that, okay, a diabetic who walks 10,000 steps a day and is willing to do XYZ things has this opportunity to reverse their issue versus someone who doesn't. And how can we best give him the tools he needs to do that, right? And that's all the stuff that I think we're really going to start seeing come out in the next, definitely this decade.
Have you seen any insurance companies offer discounts or better deals based on health data?
Yes, this kind of relates to a point I wanted to bring up with you guys, because I think you guys also see this given your early stage Web3 entrepreneurs. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen infrastructure become a lot better in the Web3 world, right? Everything from RPCs to smart contract audits and stuff like that. The other pillar that's important to start seeing really good D2C apps kind of blow up is public policy. And especially in healthcare, but also in crypto, public policy is a very sensitive issue. And, I am hoping that with Trump, we're going to see some improvements there. But why I'm bringing this up now is that insurance companies have to be very careful, because you can offer benefits to your patients or individuals with them giving you health data. But once you start pricing them negatively because of certain health activities they've done, that comes in and brings in some issues from a legal perspective. And similarly with what I'm trying to build with this whole user-owned health data, the laws are still in an extremely nascent stage for allowing that. So really what we're trying to do at UHT is create this loyalty program that lets us build this amazing repertoire of partnerships and the right healthcare partners on board, so that we're best placed to create this user-owned health data infrastructure when regulation is at a point where we can explore it properly.
Wow. Well, it's definitely, it's deeper than I first looked when I skimmed over the website and stuff. You've made me really think about, just that whole thing of being the sick in healthcare. I can't get it out of my head. As somebody who's nearing 40, right? And who has been fat for the last 10 years, right? And it's just something that's I need to do it. I talked to Andrew, I think I have to become diabetic before I actually do anything about it, which is really sad, because it's just how my brain works. You know what I mean? It's the last minute I'll cram before the test or whatever. But the idea that the incentives are broken all the way across the line is something I haven't really considered. So hats off to you. It's a big, big mission that you've kind of set up for yourself there. Yeah. Andrew, is there anything on that, or you want to switch to founder mode? Because I'd love to hear what it's like in the...
Yeah, let's jump over to that.
Unless there's something you want, is there something that you want to say that we didn't cover on the health protocol or UHT before we flip over to talking about what it's like building in the space?
No, I think you guys really helped me cover it all. I wish some of the VCs I speak with were talking in a similar line to you.
Well, I mean, are they crypto VCs? Because if they're crypto VCs, bro, they want to know about a whole different kind of, a whole different thing. They want to know more about the token and when it's coming and how much is there going to be and what the lockup periods are. Yeah. Actually, so why did you choose to go obviously the Web3 route makes sense from keeping the user-owned data, but from a fundraising perspective, right? You're raising with a token. But what made you choose that route? Or is it kind of because you're in this space, you thought it would make sense? Because adding a token to things it becomes a different game.
Yeah, it's a great question. So adding a token definitely presents its own set of unique challenges, right? But I am a huge believer that the token business models that are going to emerge are going to be much more sustainable and beneficial to the end user than the current approach, right? There are certainly inherent issues with tokens that have not been figured out yet. And there's a lot of people hard at work to figure out the right tokenomics that make this work. And, I have had the privilege to work with the head of tokenomics at Animoca, a gentleman called Mohammed Ezeldin, on our tokenomics, and we're still iterating and finding the right approach. But the reality is that the incentives that come out from the walled garden, equity structure, centralized platform approach are not sustainable long term. It's why we see so much churn in the S&P 500 over the years and so much churn amongst companies, because there's only so long you can keep extracting more and more money out of the user at a fee level or at the advertiser level, right? And I think tokens have an opportunity to change that.
As a founder in Web3, and this is, a little bit of a shift from specifically tokenomics, because I'm just interested, you've been going at it for a couple of years now. What's something that you wish you knew in this space specifically about being a founder at the onset of all this, that you would, maybe relay that insight to a new founder today?
A lot of things here I could say. And I do want to just say that I am a first-time founder. So I haven't really created a Web2 startup or something. I only know the Web3 space from a founder lens. But one thing that I've really tried to implement over the last 6 months is that everything that you read online is true, that it's one of the hardest things to do being a founder. And you're going to deal with rejection 99% of the time. And there's these crazy ups and crazy downs. And so one of the ways that's been really helpful for me to kind of move forward in a sustainable way is to kind of take a second to enjoy the small wins. Because I wasn't really doing that for the first year. I was just kind of, moving day after day, take the loss, take the win, but, doesn't matter. We got to move forward. And it wasn't sustainable because the lows got so low that, I just wish that I had taken more time to enjoy some of the small wins. So I really try and be intentional about that nowadays.
Yeah, that's great advice, and advice that I right now sitting here am benefiting.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah. I guess on a similar note to that, like I understand both of these questions. There's like a laundry list, and they can be entire series of podcasts in and of themselves. But like, what's the hardest lesson you've learned as a founder that maybe in one of these down moments or in a win moment too? What's the hardest lesson?
I mean, again, there's so many, right? But the one that's coming to my head right now is because it's particularly difficult for me. I'm quite a extroverted and honestly emotional person. And so I really needed to understand not to take things personally, because honestly, it is a cutthroat environment, but that's what being a founder is all about, right? And so, I really had to learn not to take things personally, whether that's at the investor level, partner level, or even, colleague and team member level.
Also great advice. I mean, related to that, like when, as a founder, it's very important that you position the right team and partners and people around you. Like, how do you go about like picking team members and, bringing accountability to your team, and just like any advice you have on curating and incentivizing and just inspiring team?
Definitely the hardest part of the job, right? Getting the team and keeping them incentivized and inspired, I think, is a better word. Two kind of pieces of advice that drive me on solving for this. So one is that there's a great quote from Mark Zuckerberg, who was asked a similar question that you just posed. And he said that whenever he was hiring in the initial days or even till date, he tries to hire someone he wouldn't mind working for. And I think that's an important thing that's helped me a lot, because it does help me weed out quite a few people. And I think it makes a lot of sense, especially in an early stage of a startup, because it's not as dictatorial as you would think. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, and I know all leaders do this, but I really understood when someone talked about how Brian Armstrong at Coinbase kind of, whenever he's posed a difficult question, business question, he always links back to their mission and says that, this is really what we're trying to do. And it's easy to say that. It's a little bit harder when, you're going to have trouble making payroll next month, which we all understand. But I think it makes a lot of sense, because if your mission's big enough, right, you're trying to get hundreds of millions of people using your platform or your service. And I think the idea is that if you do that successfully, people love your product, the revenues and the money will emerge. Really, the the core is getting that product that people love out there and used.
Awesome. Great advice.
And what about hitting some VCs, right? So what's some of your experience, or either you can do a horror story, or maybe it could be an experience for somebody else in the space? I just think it's really interesting because a lot of founders, like, that's their goal. Like, they're not thinking, like you just referred to, your vision and your mission, right? Which is like, that's exactly what founders should be doing. But a lot of founders have, especially early stage, they got blinders on to the raise. They're thinking about the raise, and it's such a, it's kind of like something that they all draw towards, but then when it happens, it's kind of like, now we're at the beginning. It's like, it's like an event, non-event in a way, because actually it marks like a new like the beginning. So I just wanted to see like how you think about the process or some story about it.
Yeah. So why startups and businesses are sometimes so difficult, in my opinion, is because oftentimes there's no right answer, right? It's all a spectrum, and you have to figure out the right place in that spectrum you want to be, right? So at one side of the the way I look at it is, one side of the investor spectrum is, I only want extremely aligned long-term investors who believe in what I'm doing and won't try and put me to some low-hanging fruit or things that go away from my mission but give us more money. And then on the other side is, I'll take any money I can get. I don't care what the investor's saying. The capital is all I want from them. Both sides are kind of wrong, right? You have to find that sweet middle ground, because you're not, there's these dream stories I hear about on podcasts at like 20 VC of like a company that finds an investor that's like perfectly aligned and all that. I haven't had that luck yet. It sounds like it's something I would dream about, honestly, at night, if I could find someone like that. And that's part of the game, right? Because at an early stage, it's hard for the work as a founder is to pitch your vision and constantly refine it and get it to an understandable and used state. But luckily, you'll find partners along the way that help you get there and help you refine that vision to a better place. And I feel like I'm quite lucky to have partners like Animoca and a few others that have really helped me with that process.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's good. It's a big part of what it is to be an early stage founder. So it's either you go the route where you're slogging it out and you build your own runway, or you self-fund, or however else you work it. But it's such a struggle those first few years just to even have everything refined and believe what you do, managing your first few employees. Like you said, it's so important those first few that they're aligned. It is exciting and fun though.
For sure. I mean, nothing's more exciting. But Cody, I'll just add on what you said, right? And I think it's the whole DeepSeek thing going on is such a great example, right? Web3 and AI are democratizing a lot of the infrastructure required to start a business. And we're going to see, obviously, a lot more bootstrap businesses. But again, with that spectrum thing I was talking about, right? People need to, or entrepreneurs will need to make decisions that, is 20 million extra in costs worth it to get this product out 3 weeks early? And there's no right or wrong answer to questions like that, right? It's kind of gut feel, and that's what I find really exciting as well about the space.
I have one more question kind of on this founder front, but I think it's also applicable to really anyone pursuing any profession, arguably, or interest. And it's uniquely, I'm impressed and inspired by you in relation to this question. Like, something I've noticed, working with you is you've found some really great mentors over the years that seem to have had a big impact on you and, help you with various things, whether it's through Vishal on the podcast, which anyone listening to this, go check out Web3 Coffee and all the videos, but that podcast is really great. Also, like the work you're doing with Network School. So I'm just interested, like, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs or anyone in any field that's like looking to find the right mentorship, and how to go about that if there are struggles there?
For sure. And I personally, because I'm such a extroverted thinker. I benefit a lot from mentors and being able to speak through my ideas. And I really appreciate having them. I would say, Andrew, that, and I have, the respect you have for me, it's mutual, because what I see in both of us is the hustle, right? I think right now with what you're doing with this daily NFT you're posting about, it's awesome, right? That's the kind of D2C bring onboarding that we all want to see as fellow Web3 founders. And game recognizes game, right? So my mentors will see my hustle, and that is how you get them, right? They're just like normal people. They want to see their interests and passions and aspirations for the world, and they want to see how to develop them. And you can only develop large scale ambitions with people. So, it's always a mutually beneficial thing, right? To really get there. And of course, I would say the way Vishal, Richard, and even Balaji have helped me is much more than I could ever help them. But I hope that there is some value that they also get out of giving me their time and support.
Yeah, great answer. You really have to be proactive on that front, put in the work, and game recognizes game. That's really it. Yeah, awesome.
And I think a lot of people, just to add on that, I think a lot of people don't ask. So, you have a good conversation with someone, you're inspired by someone, you get to meet them. And then people are shy to ask, like, hey, do you want to grab another coffee, or do you want to have lunch? Can I buy you lunch? And I think people, I don't know if we're like retreating into our Discord channels and Telegram groups and not getting out there, but I think just asking people was, I was going to ask you actually about that, because I know that you're going to some conferences. Would you say that getting out there into these Web3 conferences or tech conferences is a positive? You think it helps?
Yes. And I see where the question's coming from, because it's sometimes hard to justify the price, and it sometimes seems like just a party that you're, paying to go to. But there's this intangible value that comes from being physically present in front of people in an environment where everyone's looking at the same subject matter. And so I personally believe there's a lot of value. Would I rather be heads down just building my product more? Yes, but that there's a different type of value you get from those events and experiences that I think is very important.
Yeah, really great. I mean, this has been such an awesome conversation, and
it's already over an hour.
Yeah. We have a way that we kind of end our interview related podcast conversations, where it's kind of like a rapid fire series of questions. Just try to be, in the moment, mindless. I'm trying to avoid any type of degeneracy in these questions, which sometimes I lean into. But before I even jump into that, is there anything else that you want to say, or where people can find you? Obviously you have a YouTube, which is really great, Web3 Coffee, but yeah, if there's anything you want to promote here or share that we haven't talked about, please, the floor is yours.
No, I mean, I do have a YouTube channel that, I get some support from you, Andrew, on, and I'm really grateful for that. It's called Web3 Coffee on YouTube, and I'm Agastya MS on Twitter. Happy to always speak on anything healthcare and Web3.
Amazing. Yeah. Everyone go subscribe, follow.
And
really
they can get,
work.
And if they find you there, they can get into community or something for UHT. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be better to go through the website, www.uht.xyz, but there's ways to get more involved in the project at the token level as well.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you once again, Agastya. Let's jump into these rapid fire questions, try to just flow state them,
Right. Hope I don't get canceled for this one, Andrew, Cody.
No, I left all those out.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you eat this morning?
Protein smoothie.
What's your spirit animal?
A good question. Lion came to mind, but seems a bit overdone.
What's your go-to music choice when you're working?
Techno.
Any artists that you dig?
I mean, the whole gamut. Nothing's
just a mix.
Playlist.
Yeah.
How do you spend time touching grass?
I like to play tennis, but I also really enjoy weightlifting, which isn't as much grass, but yeah.
Metal.
Yeah.
Will AI destroy or save humanity?
Save.
What is the most underrated chain?
Oh, gosh. Andrew, I love looking at blockchains, so I just wish I could give a good answer. There's so many interesting ones, right? And I think 2025 will be the year where a lot of them kind of show their mettle.
Similar question. I'll ask it anyway. What's the most
Easier
chain?
Oh.
You can say Solana. It's okay.
Yeah, I think my UHT's multi-chain approach means I don't really have an answer to that.
Yeah, safe.
Pulse chain.
What's the weirdest topic in your algorithm right now?
Great question. Maybe I just kind of got, I used to be a big RuneScape fan. So for some reason, I'm watching a lot of these old school RuneScape videos. I'm pretty into it, honestly, but it's not the best use of time.
The algo knows. Yeah.
Yeah, they get us. Is the healthcare industry currently corrupt?
Yeah, and so are most industries.
Well said. What's more important, fame or legacy?
Oh, I guess fame. I'm not a big fan of legacy, very honestly.
Interesting. Those are the questions. You succeeded. You made it through the quest.
Fantastic.
Once again, appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us, Agastya.
Yeah, thanks, man. Really appreciate it. And you've given me a different outlook on just the incentives within the health industry. It's something to think about, really is. I mean, whether it's your project or something else, like it's something that I haven't really looked at, and it's definitely broken.